Peace and grace. Good afternoon, friends and family, brothers and sisters, comrades. Thank you so much for chiming in and spending some time with me this afternoon. Today will be a landmark. It will be a landmark interview with none other than Senator Sarah McBride. I'm Rachelle Wilson for Make Some Intelligent Noise, and that's what we're going to do today. Is we're going to talk about the issues, and we're going to find out where we stand. All right, so thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to make some noise. I hope some of mine is intelligent.
Well, you know, we go to the party and we party with, hey, make some noise, right? So I said, why not make some intelligent noise?
I love it.
So that's kind of where I'm at from here. You've done so much, Senator McBride. There's a before, a middle, and an after, right? So let's start at the beginning. You are a senator for the 1st District, and you were elected in November of 2020. Tell us a little bit, what's your background? Why did you go into politics?
Sure. So I got involved actually fairly young here in Delaware. I represent the 1st State Senate District, which includes, for folks who don't have the State Senate districts memorized, parts of Wilmington and some of Brandywine 100 north of Wilmington. It's the district that I was born and raised in.
Okay.
And having the opportunity to serve that community that helped raise me and shape me into the person that I am is truly the professional privilege of my life. And my path to running for office, I think in many ways, stemmed from my own experience. One, as a young person who was trying to figure out how I fit into this world.
Right.
And I think a lot of young people, for various reasons, struggle with something about themselves. They worry whether their dreams and who they are mutually exclusive. And for me, as someone who was buried deep in the closet, I was scared about how this world would respond. And I think I went searching for examples of this world becoming a little kinder and a little more welcoming for people. I was really facing a crisis of hope as a young person. And so I went searching for hope, and I found hope in the possibilities in our politics. I found hope that the through line in our country's history is the story of advocates, activists, and a handful of courageous elected officials working together to make some intelligent noise,
Right.
to educate, to advocate, to agitate, and to bring people from the shadows and the margins of society into the circle of opportunity. And I found hope in that story. And so I got involved. I became an advocate after having worked for Governor Markell and our late Attorney General, Beau Biden.
Oh, yes.
Who was a not only boss of mine, but a mentor and a dear friend.
Amazing gentleman.
An amazing, decent person. And I've been thinking about him really every day since his passing, but particularly since I had the opportunity to get elected and serve. But I worked on non-discrimination legislation here in Delaware to make sure that people were protected from discrimination in employment, housing, public spaces, worked in and with the Obama White House to advance equal rights at the federal level.
Did you actually meet Obama?
Yeah. I've met him. And then, of course, as every Delawarean has, I've met Joe Biden many times, too. Old Joe. But good old Joe.
But Obama, I tell you,
yeah.
I have so much respect for Michelle Obama, but I love her husband.
I love both of them. And actually, it's so funny you mentioned Michelle, because I was just going to say that Michelle Obama is the warmest. I remember...
Man.
When I was there, I was an intern, and then I eventually worked with them with the Obama White House when I was at an organization called the Center for American Progress. But when I was an intern in the Obama White House, Michelle spoke to us and stood there and gave every person a hug. I mean, like 100, 200 people. She just stood there and gave everyone a hug.
I believe you.
She is incredible. She is incredible. They're both incredible.
Yeah, very much so.
He is my certainly one of my inspirations. But worked in and with the Obama White House, and saw that change was possible. Okay. Saw that we were able to advance policies that, as a young person, I only dreamed of being able to.
When you say young person, how young were you?
Well, when I first got involved, when I worked for Governor Markell and for Beau Biden, I was a teenager into college. When I was in the Obama White House, I was right at the end of college, and then after college, so in my 20s, I was working at the federal level. But my decision to run really in large part stemmed less so from my work as an advocate, but more so because of my experience as a caregiver. So I was the caregiver to my husband, Andy, when he was diagnosed with cancer. He was an incredible person, smart, kind, goofy.
Right.
And he was at about 23 diagnosed with oral cancer, a very serious form of oral cancer. And thank you. And you know, anyone who's been diagnosed with cancer knows that when you hear that word, it is just a punch in the gut.
It's a scary word.
It is so scary. I mean, I think it's one of those words that everyone fears hearing.
Yeah.
And despite how frightening it was, he knew how lucky he was from that first moment after getting diagnosed, because he had health insurance and we both had access to paid leave policies that allowed him to focus on the full-time job of getting care without having to sacrifice his income.
Yes. And
me to focus, through the grace of my employer, to focus on being there by his side to care for him, but also to love him and support him. And then when we found out that his cancer was terminal, to marry him and to walk him to his passing. Up until that last, it was so incredibly sad. But
your strength, you did that.
You see, in moments like that, one, we were, up until his last moments, he knew that he was lucky. And you take stock in the fact that there is luck that helped us get through it. And I don't think that it should be a matter of luck to be able to get care without sacrificing your income, to get care that, in Andy's case, it didn't save his life, but it prolonged his life, allowed us to have precious time together.
Right.
I don't think it should be a matter of luck. I think it should be the law of the land.
Okay.
And so I ran for office because of that, to help deliver affordable quality health care for more and more Delawareans, and to pass paid family and medical leave so that people don't have to choose between their job and their health, their family, and their paycheck. But I just want to say to your point around strength, for anyone who's gone through something like that, I know I couldn't help but, as my brother said to me in the final weeks of Andy's life, I couldn't help but take stock in the acts of amazing grace that just filled our life. I mean, the grace and the miracles were everywhere. And so I think for me, it's left me with a perpetual perspective where even through challenges, I can't help but see the grace that exists, the helpers who are out there, the acts of kindness, and to be reminded that hope as an emotion and as a phenomenon, it just only makes sense in the face of hardship. And so, ran for office because of that. So that was a long, winding answer, but a lot in there.
Yeah, it was a lot in there. And again, I do see the strength. And something else that I'll pull from there, you use words like amazing grace and the miracles. Is that reference that you have a background, a spiritual background, that there's something greater than yourself kind of out there doing its thing?
Yeah. I grew up in the Presbyterian Church just over on Pennsylvania Avenue, Westminster Presbyterian Church, ordained elder in the Presbyterian Church. My faith community for me growing up was incredibly important, remains incredibly important to me. But I'll tell you what actually I think was a turning point for me spiritually was Andy's passing. When I talk about miracles, one of the miracles was that Andy held on to his health long enough for us to get married. He died 4 days after we got married.
Wow.
And the fact that he was able to make it to the rooftop of our apartment building, the fact we had friends. Caring for Andy was a full-time job for me. He had no energy. Our friends organized a wedding for us in 5 days. It was a beautiful wedding.
Right.
But then I remember in the final days of his life, the same people who organized the wedding, we all just basically camped out at the hospital as we knew it was going to be those final few days of his life.
Yeah.
And when Andy passed away, there were probably 10 or 15 of us. Each one of us, I was holding Andy's left hand. His mother was holding his right hand. And there were so many people in the room, all of us with one hand on another person. Mm-hmm. And the love in the room.
The energy.
Yes.
It's the energy tangible. From, yeah.
And
that's very real.
It was tangible. And the pastor who presided at our wedding, officiated our wedding, who presided over Andy's memorial service, he was like, when we talk about God as love, that love in that room, that tangible, almost feeling of another hand on your shoulder, right. That's God. And so for me, that was probably the experience that took me from someone who very much cherished my faith community to someone who was more spiritual as well.
Yeah. That's an amazing story. That's a very amazing story. It's very heartfelt on so many levels. I connect with you. I haven't had to do that as a caregiver for anyone dealing with that ugly word called cancer, but I do know what it feels like to lose someone that you love tremendously. In those final days. My mother. For me, it was my mother, but it was not a cancer situation. It's quite all right. She's still with me, though.
Yes.
On so many levels, I believe that she is still with me, and every now and then I can feel her kicking me in the butt.
That's right.
I'll get over there and do something. Yeah.
I'll do something. I'll be like, I can tell Andy's cringing right now. Yeah.
So one of the things that we had mentioned earlier, we talked about you like to go green and green technology. And those are just some of the things that you've already done. One thing that I want to bring to highlight because of our time.
Yeah.
November of 2020, or there close of, and please fill in the blanks for me. You are the first transgender senator in the United States of America. That's historical. That's historical. Tell me about that.
Sure. So, when I mentioned when I was a young person, I was facing a crisis of hope. It was rooted in that reality that I was buried deep in the closet, and the idea that someone like me could serve openly and authentically seemed so impossible that it was almost incomprehensible.
Right.
And so in November of 2020, when the 1st Senate District, my home district, right, the district that raised me, when they were gracious enough, kind enough, loving enough, fair-minded enough to elect me to the state Senate, I will just forever be hopeful. In part because it is such a profound reflection of how far we've come. Mm-hmm. Not everyone can understand what it's like to be me. None of us can understand what it's like to be anyone but ourselves fully. Right? It's impossible to walk in someone's shoes.
Sure.
But
you can empathize.
But you can empathize. And what voters, I think, in that district showed is that they could see me as a multidimensional human. They could see me as a full person who had a lot to bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm proud that election helped to show some young person who was facing a crisis of hope here in Delaware or elsewhere that our democracy can be big enough for them too.
I applaud you for that, for being able to stand your ground and to live your best life. Mm. But I have to say also, I don't think that it comes down to a person's personal preference. Mm-hmm. I think what it comes down to is the policy.
Yes.
The issues that you stand for.
Yes.
I really could care what color you are, or all of that stuff it's not of relevance to me. The bottom line is, what are you going to do for the people in my district and really all over the state, mm-hmm. right? And I'm a black woman. Mm-hmm. So I'm black and I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. So those are two issues that really mean something to me. And I look at the policies and the politics of who's doing what for black people, mm-hmm. and then for black women. Mm-hmm. Like that's just relative. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where, we should be putting our energy. Mind your own doggone business. Yeah. Whatever it is that people want to be and whoever they are, let them be that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But let's focus on the issue and how do they treat me.
That's right. And I think that sort of what I was saying before, which is that the voters in the district, the voters, I think, across Delaware, they don't care about a candidate's gender. They care about which candidate's going to deliver.
Right.
and that's why when I ran, I wasn't running on my identity. I was running, as I said from day one, I'm running as the healthcare candidate and the paid leave candidate.
Right.
And I'm proud that in the Delaware General Assembly, we have, as chair of the Senate Health and Social Services Committee, passed legislation that has brought down the costs of certain prescription drugs, that's expanded health coverage, for instance. We've expanded Medicaid to cover more services, to cover moms 1 year postpartum, to address the maternal health crisis that our state faces.
Yes.
And I'm proud that when I ran and said that I was going to be the paid leave senator, and people said, that's a nice policy, but good luck getting that over the finish line. I'm proud that in 2021, I introduced what's called the Healthy Delaware Families Act, which provides wage replacement to workers who are out on leave to welcome a child into their family, to struggle through a serious illness, or to take care of a loved one struggling through a serious illness. We passed that legislation. They said it'll never happen. If it does, it'll take 10 years or more. We were able to bring together small business owners, labor leaders, faith leaders, assemble a coalition that spanned the political spectrum, and pass that bill, the largest expansion of the social safety net, not in 10 years, not in 5 years, but in 1 year, with bipartisan majorities. And now, in Delaware, come 2026, when the bill is fully implemented, Delaware workers will be able to get to up to 80% of their wages through those inevitable life events. And, like I said, people care about who's going to deliver for them, and we're delivering.
Yeah. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, that's really what's most important. But now I have to take it and kind of combine the two into a question. And I can't say it's a rumor or I've heard it. I kind of keep my buzz to the ear, you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, recently I was around a group of folks who said that Senator McBride is supporting allowing young people to make their own sexual gender decisions without their parents' guidance or authority. Can you help me to understand? Did someone tell me a fib, or are there any truth to that?
So I support making sure that the government isn't getting involved in decisions between parents, their children, and doctors. Okay. That's what I support. And that's what I thought.
Clarify that so that everyone can stop rumoring.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, so there was legislation introduced, I think, by Representative Deshauna Neal, who's a representative from Ellesmere. And it was basically legislation to build on progress we've made around protecting people who are seeking reproductive health care in Delaware. So, for instance, if you're a young person struggling with who you are and you're accessing mental health care, for instance, as an example, to grapple through these things, we've seen a lot of Republican politicians seek to place government in between parents, their children, and doctors, and have government mandate, you can't get this kind of care. You can't get supportive care, loving care, affirming care. And what Representative Neal's bill would have done was basically say, government's not going to get in between parents and their children, and their doctors. And so, the far right wing Republican politicians sought to mischaracterize what that bill did. Okay. Some people might have heard that who aren't Republican politicians and are repeating it, but it really just stemmed from the same kind of Trump-like attacks at the federal level that we've seen, attacks that we've seen in places like Alabama and Texas and Florida. And we just want to make sure that we're protecting every family's right to make the decisions for themselves.
I wanted to put the question out. It's important to me to do that. As a qualified journalist, I don't want to just go off of rumor or what I heard in a crowded room with people. I want to ask you directly and let you tell me what's going on. As someone who is not only a mother but a grandmother, the parents, we definitely don't want anyone getting in between parents and children's decisions.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that they're going to decide. Because maybe, and I don't know, I certainly went through, I'm old school, I'm 60 years old, right? But back in my day, we had our own fair share of our own identity crisis and struggles. I mean, I didn't know who the hell I was at 14 years old. Maybe even at 16, I didn't really know. I was figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
But had I made a medical decision then at 16 that maybe I wanted to not make it 21, it's made. You know what I mean? So I think it is important to allow parents and children to reach a level of maturity and make those decisions for themselves, and not get involved in that.
So it's, as with every medical decision, everything has to be case by case, and you can't have a blanket policy that says, there's one course for every person. Right? And those types of decisions, healthcare decisions, are among the most personal decisions that we've ever made. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were just talking about how personal healthcare is for both of us. And so I think what we want to make sure we never do is allow for government to come in and say, we're gonna make decisions for people, not children, not the patient, their parents, and the doctor making the decision collaboratively. Right. And that is what we're seeing right now in a lot of Republican states. Government, whether it's reproductive health care or care for LGBTQ people, that government is coming in and saying, we know better than all three of these people, and we're going to make the decision for you. Yeah. And what that bill sought to do is to say, we're going to maintain the ability of these decisions to be housed within medical experts, the patient, and the family.
Excellent. So I just wanted to clear that up. So now we're all clear. We know exactly where Senator McBride stands with that. And so moving forward, again, you've done so much in the past. You're doing so much right now. But you've got some your irons in the fire for 2024. Where are we going?
Sure. So our wonderful Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester is running for Senator Carper's seat with his
he's retiring.
Yes. And so that is incredibly exciting. She is amazing, and obviously leaves big shoes to fill in the House seat. Yeah. And so I announced my campaign for her open seat in late June. And I decided to run because Congress is a mess. It's never been more important, to say the least.
I'm sorry,
right? Yeah. It's true. And
Congress is a mess.
It's a mess. And it's never been more important for us to send people who know how to roll up their sleeves, dive into the details, bring people together, and deliver tangible progress on all of the issues that matter, from healthcare to to environment, to gun safety, to education, to housing. All of the issues, we need someone who knows how to and has a proven record of delivering results on all of those issues. And that's exactly what I've been able to do in the legislature. It's what I've been able to do in my career. And I'll say, I think it's a critical moment right now because our country is facing so many challenges. And if we can't make government function, we're going to see people give up hope.
Pretty much.
And we can't let that happen because once people give up hope, they opt out, and that leaves our democracy not only worse off, but in real danger.
Well, you can fill in the blanks for me. The man, is it named Mitt Romney? Somebody, they voted him out. They didn't like him. And, that's the thing I've learned about politics. You can go in with the best intentions, the most sincere heart, and the best course of action.
Yeah.
But if you can't get along with the person that you need to get along with, your bill may not make it over the fence.
That's right.
So how are you going to deal with all of that?
Sure. So look, there are definitely Republicans
and Democrats.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. But I was going to say, look, I'm obviously as a Democrat going to be able to work with my Democratic colleagues. There are some Republicans who won't work with any Democrat, just as there are some Democrats who won't work with any Republican.
Isn't that foolish, though?
It is, because at the end of the day, in order to build the kinds of coalitions we need to deliver real progress, that means we're going to have to work across disagreements. And that's what I've done in the General Assembly. I've passed dozens of bills through the General Assembly, including major Democratic priorities like paid leave, like gun safety. And I've been able to pass those bills with bipartisan majorities. I've been able to work with my Republican colleagues on issues around healthcare, particularly in underserved communities, whether we're talking about Wilmington or rural Sussex. So one of the examples is I've worked really closely with the incredibly conservative Senate Minority Leader here in Delaware, a guy named Gerald Hocker.
Oh, I
You know Gerald Hocker.
Yes, I do.
He and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of issues.
He doesn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues with a lot of people.
That's right. But one issue we've been able to find common ground on and we've worked together on is expanding access to oral health care in underserved communities. And so we passed legislation, for instance, that has dramatically expanded the number of dentists in Delaware working at our federally qualified health centers. So Westside Family Health, Henrietta Johnson, Lorette down in Sussex, expanding access to this critical area of healthcare in communities that for too long have had these great facilities, but no providers that they can go to get that care there.
And no people that know about it. It's about advertising in order to let people know.
Well,
the people who need it the most are the ones who are least likely to be on social media or read the newspaper. And you know what I'm.
You're absolutely right. But there was nothing to advertise because these facilities, Henrietta Johnson, Westside Family Health, Lorette, they had these beautiful dental clinics that were almost brand new in some cases, ready to serve patients, but they couldn't recruit dentists to come to Delaware to work with them. And so we passed a bill that allowed those facilities to recruit dentists to this state. And they went from shuttered dental clinics to now, in all 3 counties, reopened, fully staffed dental clinics providing oral health care to hundreds of Delawareans every year. Yes,
awesome.
all because of this bipartisan bill that Senator Hocker and I worked on together. So there is opportunity to work together, to collaborate, to be bipartisan. It's how I'll be in Congress, because at the end of the day, if we're going to tackle big issues, we've got to build big coalitions, and that means working with each other.
I agree with you. Absolutely. Now, if we can just get everyone else to agree on that, then we're going to be just fine. So what are some, tell me a little bit, when you make it to Congress, what is it, one of the first things that you want to do, say in your first 100 days? What is it that you'd like to see happen?
Sure. So one of the bills that I was really excited about that President Biden was championing was called Build Back Better. And unfortunately, a lot of that bill, because of the negotiations, fell to the negotiating room floor. And that's paid leave, affordable early childhood education, affordable child care, investments in home care and elder care, investments in housing, that got left behind. And so if I get to Congress, my priority will be picking back up those pieces, and saying, come January 2025, we have to prioritize these investments in paid leave for all, in early childhood education, including affordable child care and early childhood education, universal pre-K, investments in housing to bring down the cost of housing, investments in home care and elder care, so that folks, particularly those who are aging, can get the kind of health care that they need in their own environments, in their own homes, so they can remain in their communities and live with that dignity. And so that's going to be my first priority, is championing those policies.
I think that's excellent. I've got to say, as a side note, I do have a part-time job. One of the things that I love to do is look out for seniors and elders. So I work for a little agency, and I have this amazing little Italian lady that I go and I kind of look after 2 days out of the week, just 2 days out of the week. But I've got to tell you, the pay is really... I don't help this little lady or any of the other patients because they're paying me so fabulously.
Yeah.
I do it because when I get old, I'm putting in, good karma for later, someone to come and take care of me when I'm old. Right. Pay it forward. So, Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I talk about home care and elder care, at the heart of that issue is increasing pay for the caregivers who are on the front lines.
Yes.
One of my first bills in the state Senate actually was to increase what Medicaid was paying for our personal care workers, because it was woefully insufficient what Medicaid was paying, and therefore the wages for those individuals, for those caregivers, was way too low.
But it's the agency that is getting it, and then they give a little piece to the workers, but the agency is really Pac-Man chopping it up.
Well, and particularly those bigger agencies, and so we need to make sure that there is the proper oversight, and I think at the federal level you can do this, the proper oversight to make sure that the money that is going to those agencies is going to the workers. Because when you have the kinds of wages, these are critical, life-saving, life-perpetuating, life-enhancing roles, they should be paid as such.
Yes.
And it is difficult work. I mean, it is physically and emotionally draining.
It is.
And the burnout is real. And so if we want to help keep folks in those roles, if we want to make sure that we can continue to provide that care, we've got to increase the pay. And so it's been a priority for me since day one, and it'll certainly be a priority for me from day one in Congress.
Excellent. So I know that our time is growing short, but I am the mother. I think I mentioned to you, I am the mother of an currently incarcerated son. Finally, after 15 years of incarceration, his paperwork is on the conveyor belt, and it's, prayerfully, right, we're coming through, and they're going to give me back my son. They gave him 25 years of incarceration for a liquor store robbery that should have been 5 or 6 years for no injury. But we're talking about Georgetown, Delaware, which is where some things took place. And I'm telling you this backstory because I noticed in your resume that you were on the Judicial Committee, as well as the Department of Correction or something of that nature.
Yeah, the Correction and Public Safety Committee. I used to be on it.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the Judicial Committee. Where are we and how can we, is it possible to hold judges accountable for their sentences? Is there a way to look at them? At least if they know that they're being watched, perhaps they'll be more mindful about the sentences that they give out, particularly, and I've got to say it, Senator McBride, Black, brown, and golden people, we have gotten it pretty tough over the years, and it's not a whole lot better. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, our criminal justice system is not operating in a humane and smart way in far too many instances. And what we have seen are policies that have incarcerated folks for extremely long periods of time. We have seen a system that has disproportionately, in some cases, ravaged communities, particularly Black and brown communities across our country and within our state. I'm glad that we are finally reckoning with the racist mandatory minimums, the drug disparities in the disparities in our drug laws that have really created a system that over-polices, over-punishes Black and brown folks. And we've made some important progress in reforming our criminal code, eliminating or reducing the use of mandatory minimums, because in a lot of instances, the over-punishment that judges were handing down was because their hands were tied by laws that were cruel and inhumane. And so we've made important progress on that. There's still more work to do. But what we also need to make sure we do is that once folks have served their time, we have to make sure that they are set up for success.
Yes.
And so one of the bills that I was proud to have passed alongside Representative Mimi Minor-Brown in my first term,
my baby girl.
Love her. Was legislation that for the first time ever in our juvenile justice system funded vocational and mental health reentry services for youth reentering society from our juvenile justice system.
Yeah,
we had never had that. what are we thinking when we have young people who are leaving a juvenile justice system? They're probably already involved in the family services division and foster care, and we're just sending them out without the kinds of
and demanding you go get a job and you be good and behave yourself. And they're, by this point, they're crazy.
Well, we've not provided the kinds of support that folks need to reenter society and not fall back into the behaviors that in many cases were behaviors of survival beforehand.
Right.
And so we passed that legislation funding reentry services for juveniles, for youth leaving our juvenile justice system.
Excellent.
And
Bravo.
We've done even more in the adult space. But one of the things I just had this conversation earlier today. I mean, we want folks who are reentering society to get a job, right? Mm-hmm. But the amount of time that folks have to spend traveling to go to their probation officer every week, to go to the mandatory classes, and a lot of these things are critical, but we should be making those services much more accessible for folks.
Can we get a little van
right.
and
Absolutely.
pick them up?
I was talking with someone a while ago who was opening a business that employed a lot of reentering citizens.
Good.
And he went to the Department of the Department of Corrections and said, "Can we once a week bring in the probation officer to this facility?"
Yes.
And they said no. You had 25 re-entering citizens, all of whom needed to see a probation officer. They would have to take hours off of work to go on public transportation to go to the officer. They'd have to spend the hour with the officer every week. It would be much easier for the state and for those individuals and help protect their jobs if we brought services to them. And so we don't take opportunities to be more creative, more compassionate, more, just frankly, have some common sense with how we're engaging here, because we're setting people up for failure too often. And when we set people up for failure, we send them back into the correctional system, and it's just a cycle that keeps repeating itself.
Delaware is 77% recidivism rate.
Yeah.
They come out and they go back. I've done all that I know how to do as a human being and as a mother to my son. He was only 21, 20 years old when they took him. It's 15 years. He's now 35 or something, right? That he's been in that place. And jail is prison is a different culture.
Yeah.
It's a whole different mentality. So I've done all that I can. I have counseling for him. I've gotten people to agree to give him a job. Pardon me. We've got him an apartment, a place to live. I'm going to relinquish my vehicle and go get me another one so he'll have transportation, right? Like all of the things that would block him from success, I've tried to put it up, and it has been exhausting.
Yeah.
So if we could get the state to help a little bit, that would be nice. But I got to tell you, and I think you already know this, we got to follow the money trail. If we recidivate them, send them back to prison, then the federal government is going to pay the state of Delaware to house them.
Yeah, per bed. I mean, it's
ugly.
It is a vestige of some of the worst sins of our country. It is a system that isn't working for the folks it's seeking to rehabilitate. It's not producing the kind of public safety that we need. And it's resulting in, well, it might be getting some money from the feds. It's also resulting in a drain on state funding.
I agree.
That we could be spending, if we weren't over-policing and over-punishing, we could be spending in education. We could be spending in vocational training and job opportunities.
Yes.
And fortunately, we have seen a reduction in the number of people incarcerated in Delaware's facilities. Now, unfortunately, some of that's because we're sending folks to facilities out of state. But we have seen a decrease overall because of those reforms that I mentioned around sentencing. But there's a lot more to do in that context, but even more to do when it comes to supporting folks who are reentering. That is, I think, the biggest area of improvement that we need.
I don't know if the legal system or the judicial system understands that when you put one person in the prison, you really put the entire family and friends, a circle of people who love them, I feel as if I've been incarcerated for the last 15 years. I really do.
I can only imagine. I mean, and I'll say, and this isn't the fault of the folks who are working on the front lines. It's not the fault of those who are working every single day to try to protect our communities to the best of their ability.
Right.
But we've got policies in place that are traumatizing people, traumatizing communities, traumatizing families, and that trauma creates a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. And we as a state then have to grapple with all of the downstream consequences of the trauma that these policies are imposing on communities, people, and families every single day. And it doesn't make us safer. Mm-hmm. And so let's be smarter about this. Let's have policies that genuinely protect public safety without the policies that are actually undermining public safety at the end of the day because they're undermining human dignity.
Right. I love that. Governor John Carney said that Delaware is a trauma-informed state. Now you think about that for yourself. So Senator McBride, what haven't I asked that I should have asked that you want the people to know?
Sure.
I would like for you to please give us that.
Sure. Well, look, I encourage folks to visit my website, sarahmcbride.com. They can read about my background, some of the issues that I'm focused on. They can sign up for more information and keep involved. At the end of the day, over the next year...
Tell us that now. How does...
sarahmcbride.com.
Gotcha.
Over the next year, I'm going to be spending my time doing what I've been doing really since I got elected to the state Senate, which is traveling up and down this state, having conversations with Delawareans of every background in every corner of this state. Yes. And so over the next year, I continue to look forward to having those conversations, to meeting folks where they are, to hear about their hopes and their dreams, and yes, their fears. Yeah. So that I, as a state senator, and hopefully I, as their member of Congress, can really tackle the issues that are top of mind for folks that are keeping people up at night. Issues like healthcare, issues like childcare, issues like housing and gun safety. And that'll continue to be my priority, and I look forward to those conversations moving forward.
I hope that you would honor me to come back again and talk with me further as we move forward. I've got to tell you, they say save the best for last. You are the completing interview that I am doing for 2023 of all my elected officials. I've been doing this for 7 or 8 years. And so I'll be back in January, and I want to get you on the calendar. I really very much would like you to come back and talk again.
I'd love that. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be the closer of 2023.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll just put this little plug in there because we've never had the good opportunity to talk before, and I know so many of your colleagues that I have had here on the show, but I'll say this much. I didn't get here by accident. I'm here by choice and by that graciousness, that amazing grace we talked about earlier. So everything that I do is always about informing the public. Particularly, I've got to care about the Black, brown, and golden people. I've got to do that. That's a part of my job. And I think it's just very, very important that I bring that information out. So when January and we get our calendars right, we want you to come back, and I really believe that we can give you all of the support in order to see you in Congress and take Lisa's seat.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. All right, everybody, that's it for today. I'm Rachelle Wilson. Make some intelligent noise. The Justice Movement. Today we had Senator Sarah McBride join us and answer the questions transparently. Go to her website, find out if this is, check her out. See what you think. And remember to go to the voting polls, because that's where you lift your voice and that's where it matters. Until next time, God loves you and so do I. Peace and grace. Wonderful.